Hello everyone, welcome back to the Malbeefance channel. This is Malbeefance for Coastal Virginia Esports Gaming. And sorry it's been a while. I have been recovering. I had to go into the hospital for some serious surgery. I won't get into the details if you don't mind. Along the way, I have managed to get a new audio setup, and we're using that for this video. Hopefully things sound a little bit better, but if it isn't one thing, it's another, because even though I've got this new audio system, this new microphone and all, my voice has not recovered from the breathing tube that they had to put in me while I was in the hospital. Hopefully my voice will get better. So I do apologize for that, but I've discovered that if I want to do these videos, I am not going to be able to wait for the absolute perfect environment. So I'll just, I'll take what victories I can. So with that, allow me to move into the premise of today's video. As you can see on the board, we're looking at Europe. This is Strategic Command World War One. Now, a little while ago, Slytherin, they put out Strategic Command War in the Pacific. They've got an entire line of these games. War in Europe for World War II. They've got one that encompasses the entire globe. Basically, it's the War in Europe and War in the Pacific combined. And there are some more changes like map, size, scale, and stuff like that. But basically, it's those two games combined. Well, the thing is, a lot of content creators, a lot of gamers, they have put out a lot of videos on Strategic Command War in the Pacific. I wanted to do something a little bit different. World War One does not have a lot of games dedicated to it because, quite honestly, World War One is not very adventurous. It's not very dramatic. There isn't the big movement battles, the giant encirclements, the paratrooper surprises. You just don't have that. Amphibious operations. World War One just was not known for these things. It was known for being a slogfest. It was known for being a beat down, drag out type of conflict. It was really terrible by any measure. And I mean, war is no matter what. But compared to World War II, World War One is, and forgive me for using this term, but it was boring. Okay? And as a student of history, I actually find World War One to be somewhat fascinating. If you never forget, if you don't remember anything about World War One, there's two things that you should never forget. And one of them is that it should have never happened. And two, it absolutely guaranteed a World War II. Okay? And like I said, if you don't learn anything else about World War One, these are the two lessons that you absolutely should learn and never forget. So, Strategic Command, World War One obviously is about World War One. It's about the war in Europe portion of it. There really wasn't a lot going on outside of Europe, but there were some things that happened. And as I had mentioned, there is a line of these games. So if you've played one, then you know the mechanics of this game. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes, a half an hour going over how the game is played. As far as the game mechanics are concerned, if you're unfamiliar with this game, you'll learn the game mechanics, You'll pick them up as I go. I will discuss my strategy as I go through the game. I may or may not mention other potential strategies. I'm trying not to because these videos are going to be long enough as they are. So I'm going to try and keep it as short and sweet as possible, with the exception of this first video where I got to do this intro. Okay, so with that said, that is pretty much everything for the intro. I'm just going to get into the game. As you can see on the screen, I've already got it fired up. I've already gone through the selection process. Real quickly, in the game, you are able to choose the 3D counters that I have picked that are represented here that you can see, or you can use NATO counters. I do not like to use the NATO counters for two reasons. One, I've got poor eyesight, and the NATO counters have got lots and lots of tiny detail in them that make it difficult for me to read. Second, the NATO counters, they, because again, it comes back to my bad eyesight, they can be a little bit misleading. Okay, the difference between mechanized and artillery, you know, I mean, most people, they can tell it in an instant. Okay, but my eyesight at my age has gotten to the point now where the 3D counters are a lot easier for me to figure out, a lot easier for me to see what I'm looking at, and quite honestly, I think they just look prettier, that too. So, all right, so the game starts off, you've got several scenarios that you can play. I'm playing the full campaign, which starts on August 1st of 1914. Austria-Hungary has declared war on Serbia. In response, the Russian Empire has declared war on Austria-Hungary in defense of Serbia. That has led to the dominoes falling. Imperial Germany declaring war on Russia, France declaring war on Imperial Germany. And so those are the sides right now. France, Russia, Serbia versus Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, that from now on I'm just going to refer to as Austria. Okay. The start of the turn is the Germans need to deploy a few more units. They are optional as to where they get deployed. I am going with a Russia first scenario. I'm playing against the computer, so I've learned from experience that the computer understands that Russia has an advantage in the early part of the game, in the first couple of turns. Historically, the Russians were able to mobilize much quicker than Germany and Austria thought they would. So Germany had already planned to do what they called the Schlieffen Plan. It is a plan to go through Belgium and hit France in the north, going around their extensive defenses here, outflanking them, and getting to Paris within a matter of weeks. The problem with the Schlieffen Plan was that it was extremely pre-World War II German planning, which means that it was one of them plans where if one tiny little thing went wrong, it throws off the entire operation. Everything has to happen like clockwork or the plan falls apart. Okay. Now, I realize that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but for those of you that have studied the First World War and have studied the Schlieffen Plan, you know that it is only a teeny bit of an exaggeration. Okay? So, with the computer being aware of this advantage, I need to do a operation where, at the very least, I improve my defenses on the Eastern Front. I'm actually going to take that to the next level, and I'm actually going to focus on Russia as my primary opponent. Try to knock them out of the war first, and then sweep back across the map to eventually take on France and eventually the UK when they enter the war, which eventually they will do. So first I have a headquarters unit that I need to deploy, and I am going to put them down here. Next we have an artillery that is not fully mobilized. That's why it's strength 5 instead of strength 10. Then I've got cavalry. Now, this is the last war for cavalry. Cavalry suffered mightily in the First World War, and there were a few countries like Poland that still used it when World War II came around, and they found out quickly what an incredibly horrible decision that was. But right now, in World War I, cavalry can still function effectively, and so Germany's got some of those to deploy. Russia has a number of them that they've got available to them. I have a couple infantry corps here that need to be deployed. I'm going to put them in these two locations here north in eastern Prussia, north of Warsaw, in order to help bolster that area. So now here you wind up getting some advice. Delaying conflict with the UK, simply as long as I don't violate Belgian, Netherlands, or Denmark neutrality, and I do not move naval forces out into the North Sea or the Atlantic, this will slow down the UK's entry into the war. They will join eventually, but I can slow down their declaration of war a few turns by going ahead and following these restrictions, if I want to. So now this is information about the Netherlands. I got to stay on good terms with the Netherlands because I receive a lot of resources from them. In the game, the resources that you spend in order to be able to repair and buy units, do research and development and diplomacy, they are referred to as military production points, or MPPs. I simplify that to production points. And the Netherlands provides about 60 to 65 points out of the 300 that I get in the early stages of the game. So that's an important amount of income. So I do need to pay attention to staying on the Netherlands' good side. All right, so that's it for the notices. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to maneuver the High Seas Fleet so that we are not irritating the United Kingdom. There's a couple of units up here. This is a Marine detachment. I don't really need them on this side of the map, so I'm going to force march them over towards the Eastern Front along with this infantry corps so that they can help improve my defensive position on the Eastern Front. Get my dreadnoughts ready for when the British enter the war. Now what I'm doing here is I am maneuvering the fleet in what I refer to as their surge position. When I'm ready, when I get the announcement that the UK will be joining the war, I will have the fleet here ready to surge and do support a mining operation where I'm going to mine the Thames and I'm going to mine the Straits of Dover in order to help stymie any movement of the French or Royal Navies coming up out of the Straits into the North Sea. Now, there are some units here that are under strength, and that is supposed to reflect mobilization. They are not fully mobilized. I'm going to have to spend some production points in order to be able to go ahead and get them fully mobilized. I will be doing that in subsequent turns. Right now, over here, this is my running total of how many production points are available. This is the first turn of the game. I do not have any available. The percentage numbers underneath represent the mobilization of the economy to its wartime footing. Okay, Germany and Austria are at 100%. The economy is 100% mobilized for war. The Ottoman Empire will join eventually, and right now their economy is only 20% mobilized for war. Okay, so that takes care of the fleet, except for this guy here. One thing that I always forget to do on turn one is I forget to allocate some resources going to the Austrian Empire because they need the help. Now, right now at the beginning of the game, 10% of my max income is going to be 35 production points going to Austria, but trust me, they need them. And that's how you do that. Okay, so now the Western Front, let's take care of that. I move cautiously so they can see this guy. If I just run straight up there, it winds up being a surprise engagement that I'm going to be on the losing side. Oh, excuse me. That I'm going to be on the losing side of. So move up cautiously. Now that I can see them, I can move in without getting ambushed. I have a movement point left, so I will entrench them in place. Now, it's going to cost this guy all of his movement points in order to move into these mountains. That's okay. This early in the game, throughout all of World War I, the advantage is on the defense. And this early in the beginning of the war, it most certainly is. The French could attack this guy. Well, they could attack this one too, but now that he is entrenched, it'll just be that much more difficult for them to do it. The French could attack this unit, the 21st Infantry Corps, but they will take a lot of losses doing it. So now I want to move. There's not a lot of maneuver going on the Western Front, so I really don't need the cavalry here. I mean, they could do spotting. They've got a greater spotting range than the infantry, but because of the plan that I've got on the Eastern Front, I need them on the Eastern Front, so I force march them as far as I can. For those of you that are thinking about it or asking about it, yes, there is the ability to use rail lines, to use trains to move them, but that costs production points that I do not have here at the start of the game. So again, we're moving our infantry up, and I'm entrenching them where I can in order to give them a good defensive position. I'm going to play defense on the Western Front as much as possible because, as I had mentioned, I'm going to focus my effort on knocking out Russia first. Now, I move this guy down from Metz. That way he's got movement points left over that I can use to entrench him. If I moved the 3rd Bavarian Corps down to this hex, it would have cost them all 4 of their movement points, and I would not have been able to entrench him. Now, this is a unit that is, along with the 16th Infantry Corps, they are actually taking up positions within French territory. And also, if you didn't notice when the 13th Wartenberg moved into this hex, it allowed them to see the French infantry corps that is guarding Verdun. So now this guy, that's as far as he can get, but that's as far as I need him to go. He's got 1 movement point left over that I can use to entrench. As you can see here, you can rotate the entrenchments. You can entrench up to 3 sides. How many sides you entrench has no bearing over the benefit of entrenching other than the fact that if you are attacked on a side that is not entrenched, you will not receive the bonus. But if I entrench one side or two or three, it's the same bonus on all three sides. Now, the 19th Saxon Corps, I need them in this position just south of the Ardennes, okay, at the Bry mining facility. However, they're not going to have any movement points left, so they're not going to be able to entrench. That's okay. The computer programming understands that Verdun is a very important objective, and they will not have this unit attack anything in order to prevent that unit from becoming exposed to a counterattack. So I'm all right with these guys moving in here and not being able to entrench. Now, all I'm trying to do is line the front line on the west here so that I've got a continuous line of defense from the Belgian Dutch border all the way down to the French-Swedish border, or excuse me, French-Swiss border. Okay, forgive me, all of you Swiss folks that are watching this. That's the Swiss border, not the Swedish border. Sorry about that. So anyways, but making this line of defense, and then eventually I'm going to have a second line behind it. Okay, doing that allows me to move some of these infantry corps over to the Eastern Front to help out over there, and I need it. So we will force march them. Okay, and then I got two more that I'm going to march out in that direction, because then I need the rest of them right here. Okay, not you. There we go. I need the rest of these to help build my second defensive line. There are more units that will mobilize. I will get them automatically. They will arrive. Most of them will arrive here in the Ruhr Valley, and then one will show up down here in Strasbourg. Those 7 that are coming, they will complete the defensive line that the second defensive line that I'm building here. Now I'm going to move one of these headquarters units out to the west also. Headquarters units, you have 3 ways of controlling them. You can set what units they are the headquarters for manually. You can do it, you can let the computer do it automatically, or you can do a combination of the two. Okay, I went ahead and I set them for the middle. The computer's going to set this up automatically, and then they will assist wherever they can. If they've got extra supply or coordination left over, they will go ahead and assist those units that are out of headquarters control. You can tell how many units a headquarters can control by looking down here where it says rating. Okay. And then I'm sure as the game goes along, you'll figure out what the rest of this stuff means. Okay. Now, like I had mentioned, you can set up who the headquarters controls, what units it's responsible for. You can set that up manually. It's just one more thing that, it's just one more piece of micromanagement that I really don't care to do, because the computer programming is good enough to where it selects units accurately enough, effectively enough, to where I'm happy with it. Now, because we have moved through Luxembourg, they will surrender. We started already at war at Luxembourg. That was actually a game mechanic. They did that just to allow for Germany to be able to go through Belgium a little bit easier. It was just a play balance thing. So try not to get bent out of shape about it for those of you that are concerned about that level of detail. Now, force marching has a negative effect. It will affect the unit's readiness. It will affect the unit's morale. It'll drive them down. If you do multiple force marches over a number of turns, consecutive turns, it will really kill the unit's readiness. It'll kill the unit's morale, which has a major negative effect on its combat capabilities. Now, as they rest, if you do have to force march them several times, like I'm going to have to force march these guys at least 2 turns in a row. And it's going to have a major negative effect on their fighting ability. However, if they get a turn to sit and rest, that readiness, that morale comes back up. Oh, I moved him too far. He should have stopped there. Now, these are my scout planes. You can also use them as bombers. Aviation is in its infancy during the First World War. I kid you not. Bombing in the First World War was literally the pilot or his spotter picking up the bomb by hand and dropping it out the side of the plane. That is how primitive this was. Okay, so in the early stages of the game, your spotters are best for just that, for spotting. If you go ahead and you use them to spot a location before you attack, it gives a modifier to those units that go ahead and attack. Might not be much of a modifier, but it does give you some advantage. All right, so that takes care of the fleet. That takes care of the Western Front. I'm not doing anything with the German forces down here on the Italian front. That will happen eventually. So now we will move to the German forces over here on the Eastern Front. The Memel garrison, I'm going to use them to scout just a little bit so that I can see this guy up here. And then I will bravely retreat him back to Memel and then entrench him. Now, there is a tactical reason why I don't entrench him up here, and that has to do with how long of a defensive line I'd end up creating. I'm not going to have a lot of units up here, so I have to be careful on how big of a front I create. And so there's the Königsberg garrison. I move them to Tilsit, and they dig in there. 17th Corps will dig in at Grumben. I know I'm going to butcher this name. Gumbinen. First Corps will cover their flank. Now, 1st Reserve Corps, you have 2 choices. You can either move them here in order to cover the right flank of 17th Corps, or you can move them here in order to block an advance from Grodno. There is a garrison unit in Grodno, and again, if I just run up here, it's going to be a meeting engagement that's going to cause casualties that I cannot afford this early in the game. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move through Johannesburg down here. Now, because of the forest, I can't spot this guy. Normally, when you're within 2 hexes of a unit, you can spot them. But because of the forest, because of the Tannenberg part of the Tannenberg forest here, I cannot see him. So I'm going to play it cautious, and I'm going to dig in here. Now, 7th Corps scouting, and then bravely retreat. Now, Ninth Corps will move up to the fortress and dig in. 20th Corps will back him up. I can't move 20th Corps down here into this hex and still I won't be able to entrench him, and the Russians have a lot of units right here and they could take advantage of that exposed position. I mean, it's already exposed, but they're going to have to come across the river, and that's going to cost them a lot of movement points. Plus, they will be moving into the forest, which again will add to their movement woes. So it's a risk one way or the other. But this is definitely the cautious play, and the first couple of turns I do need to be cautious. So Thorn Garrison will advance to the north of Kutno, and they will dig in. I'll bring the artillery into Thorn. This detachment will come down here to block potential movements towards Thorn and Bromberg. However, it uses up all of his movement. Now here, instead of moving all the way forward, using up all of their movement points in order to put a defensive line right along here, I can move him to here and entrench, because they've got the river here to help with slowing down any movement of units that attempt to come this way. I'm moving Landwehr Corps across the river because I don't want the garrison or the Posen detachment to be exposed on four sides. Now you see the 1st Cavalry Corps moves up to here, and their spotting range allows them to see these two units that were invisible before. And they will go ahead and dig in there, and their partner will dig in behind them. Once again, set von Bülow's headquarters to support, and I will move him here because headquarters have a range. They have a coverage range. There's his. It's a pretty big range. However, von Bülow is not exactly what I would consider the greatest leader. He's only able to cover for 5 units. So that's going to be these 5 down here most likely. We will get more headquarters units as the game goes. So that's it for moving the German units, except for this guy here. I'll move the scout unit up here to Allenstein. Basically, it gives them a decent attack range. They can pretty much hit anything along here. They can scout them out to help out my guys. Same thing goes with the guy over here. The reason that I moved this recon unit down here is because he can pretty much cover the entire Western Front from that position. All right, so now we start moving Austrian units. I'm going to move him up here to this position in between the woods and have him entrenched there. Same concept going on here. So not only is he entrenched, but he's behind the river as well. Go up and block this intersection. All right, now where Russia has its advantage is right here in Galicia. I have to defend the city and the oil wells here. If the Russians are able to get their hands on them, it will be the devil to pay to peel them out. Entrench. Now, there are like 15 corps along here that the Russians are able to use. They're going to use a number of them to try and swing down around my Austrian right flank to get in here. They want to get to Stanislaw. They want to get to Lemberg. They want to get to, help me out with this one. I'm not even going to attempt it, but they want to get this city. Getting these objectives, these national morale objectives, basically what they do is they help Romania decide to come into the war, and that would go ahead, Romania here would go ahead and just extend the front massively. And the Austrians just do not have the manpower for that. So I've got to do everything I can to keep the Russians from getting into Western Galicia. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of units to do it. So now I need him in here in order to protect this unit's flank, the 22nd Austrian Corps. Unfortunately, moving him there uses up all of his movement points. Cavalry is not great for defense, but right now I gotta use what I've got available. This cavalry unit over here is why I am using this unit to move up and block at the river instead of being here in the city. And that's that reason right there. All right, now that's everything that I've got available right now for the Austrians to be able to put on this border. You'll notice it's a pretty thin defensive line. So hopefully I will be able to carry out my plan of getting a defensive line, a solid defensive line of units that run from here. Let me zoom the map out a little bit. That run from here on the Romanian-Russian border all the way along to all the way up here at the East Prussian Baltic states border. Now, there is a larger strategic plan. So let me go over that right now in case anybody is wondering. I want to create this defensive line. I'm actually going to advance. Once these guys get over here, I'm going to advance my line up to here. I'm going to take these two cities, advance into Poland. There is a political reason for it. It helps Germany's political situation with Bulgaria to make advances into Russian-controlled Poland. So I will ultimately advance the line up to here. And then it will be a solid defensive line from down here at the Romanian-Russian border all the way up, as mentioned, to the Baltic Sea. The reason that I'm doing that is because the computer, even though it has some really good programming, it isn't exactly the smartest. And what they will do, what the computer will do, is it will move a large number of troops in here in order to defend Poland. Okay? I can understand why the computer finds that important because it has Warsaw, the fortress here, Ivangorod. Okay, these are all major national morale objectives. If you haven't already figured it out, these bars up here, these are the current national morale levels. Driving national morale down to zero is how you force a country out of the war, how you make them surrender. So the national morale objectives are critical. Morale is also lost for units destroyed. It is also lost for cities that are occupied that are not objectives. Or I should say they're not listed as objectives. It's just that the ones that are listed as objectives, they hurt national morale a lot more when those objectives are lost. Okay, so getting back to the strategy, I want the computer to put a lot of units in this pocket that I'm going to create by having my cavalry units, both my German and Austrian cavalry units. They're going to form up here and here, along with what infantry units I can spare, and we are going to push up the Bug River to Brest-Litovsk, and we're going to push down from Johannesburg to link up there and trap as many Russian units as I can in what I will refer to as the Polish pocket. Once that is done, if I'm able to capture a dozen to 15 corps in here, and if I get really, really lucky, I will capture a headquarters unit. If I'm able to do that, then the war with Russia is all but won. The loss of that many units, basically, the computer doesn't know how to recover from a defeat that catastrophic, and it winds up causing their center line of defense to just basically collapse. Now, a player, an experienced player, even an intermediate player, they will realize what is happening, and they will normally they will do what Russia does best in a war situation, and that is sacrifice land in order to gain time. Okay, but the computer hasn't been programmed that way, and I'm going to take advantage of that discrepancy. Now, if it sounds like I'm gaming the computer, you're right, I am. If you're not happy about that, if you would prefer that the computer be better at figuring out its strategy, I'm right there with you. Okay, I like a computer opponent that can adapt, that can see these kind of obvious ploys and react to it. Okay, well, at least react relatively intelligently. Okay, but I didn't mention earlier, I think I forgot to mention earlier, I just want to show you the game. I want to introduce you to it. This is not a deep dive study on strategy. It is not meant to be a in-depth criticism of the computer programming that went into the game. Okay, and so please keep that in mind as we move forward. So now, this is my second area of concern, the Austrian-Serbian front. The Austrians do not have a lot of forces here in the beginning of the game, and it takes quite some time to build up their numbers. Now, as the German, I can send forces down here to help bolster them up. My strategy does not allow for it at this point in the game. So I have to work very smartly on the Serbian front. The Austrian forces do not have a lot of firepower when it comes to the offensive. So in the beginning, I'm going to be taking my battles picking them very cautiously here on the Serbian front as I build up the Austrian forces in order to be able to move into Serbia. To start, I'm just going to get up against Belgrade, the Serbian capital, so that I can threaten it. Now, I could move in here, but that exposes this unit to four sides. Also, the garrison down here in Vallevo might want to move north and take this city from me. They might have the movement points to be able to do that. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to surrender the initiative and just move here. But I do have plans for this garrison unit. That is actually going to be one of the first places that I'm going to have the Austrians attack. Now, I forgot to mention Montenegro here, little Montenegro, is already at war with the Central Powers. So this unit is here just to go ahead and make sure that the Serbian forces, the computer, doesn't get any crazy ideas about trying to move up the coast and take all these port facilities away from me, which is exactly the strategy that I'm going to be using against the Serbian forces. I'm going to be, if I get what I want, I'm going to be able to create a defensive line running down these row of hexes, and then I'm going to be building up forces here in southern Croatia here, or southern Yugoslavia, however you want to look at it, um, and go ahead and have them move down the coast in order to take the port facilities away from Bulgaria and prevent their use by the UK and France and ultimately, eventually, Italy. All right, so the other thing I got to do is I got to move the Austrian fleet. All right, so I just had this Austrian destroyer lay mines here. I'm going to try and restrict access coming into the Adriatic. Now, I don't like using this sub when it's at half strength, but I have a feeling that the French are going to respond to this move, and I just want to be ready in case they send anything this way to go ahead and check out what I'm doing. I moved the Austrian fleet down here to Pola and Trieste so that I can go ahead and finish getting them mobilized while leaving these port facilities open for these guys to come back to. Having naval units in port gives them a defensive bonus. Out here on the open ocean, they can be surrounded. It is possible for naval units to move through a hex that is occupied by a enemy naval unit. So it is very easy, if you've got the forces available, it is very easy to surround an enemy unit and attack them from all sides, which has a offensive bonus, even though the unit is able to escape. All right, so that takes care of the Austrian units except for him. I'm going to need his help on the Serbian front. So I'll move him from central Austria down here. Okay, so now I get to use the Ottoman units. I get to move them around. Eventually, they like the UK for the Triple Entente. The Ottomans are ultimately going to join the Central Powers. And so I get to manipulate their forces a little bit at the start of the game. There's only so much I can do with them because they are neutral. So first I want to get this unit closer to Constantinople so that way I can eventually get him up to full strength status. You may notice this unit has a green 10. It is at full strength, but I can upgrade it to elite reinforcements. You may have seen that on some of my German units over on the Western Front. That's what that yellow number means. It means that there are reinforcements that can be allocated to this unit so long as other restrictions are met. It has to be in supply. It has to have at least 6 supply out of 10 going to it. And it cannot be next to an enemy unit. There's some other restrictions, but I'm getting into the weeds and I promised I wouldn't do that. Whoops. So now I am force marching these guys over here to the Caucasus because eventually, as you've already figured out, the Ottoman Empire is going to be at war with the Russian Empire. And for those of you who are familiar with your European and Asian history, Ottomans and Russians at war with one another is just another Tuesday. Now these two units here, once I get them, they're going to stay here until I am able to get them fully mobilized, get them up to full strength. And then I'm going to move them down here into Mesopotamia in order to blunt the British invasion that is going to occur from Kuwait up into Iraq. Again, for those of you that are familiar with history, Lawrence of Arabia. That is a real thing in this game. And the Ottomans, playing as the Ottoman player, I have got to take steps to counter it. And I'm going to do that as much as I can prior to the Ottomans entering the war. Okay, so now swing the map out, make one more look around, make sure I didn't forget anything. So there's our Serbian front. There is the Eastern Front, our naval forces. Here is the Western Front. Now, yeah, one last thing before I wrap up this episode. As you already know, I chose not to go with the Schlieffen plan. I chose not to invade Belgium. Okay? However, there is a game mechanic that allows for the French player, or not the French player, but the computer, as France, to declare war on Belgium, and this is to make it more difficult. This is to help the computer, okay? Basically, it gives the computer an opportunity to attempt to outflank me, okay, if I didn't have any forces here. Okay, but I've played this game a lot. I really do like this game. I have played it a lot. And so I know that eventually the computer is going to do it, and I'm going to be ready for it. There is a downside. If I'm allocating forces here for the eventual French invasion of Belgium, then obviously I can't use these forces anywhere else. And I apologize for all the pauses in my talking. Again, I'm still recovering from the surgery. Still have the problem with the throat from the tube that was down my throat. And it makes it a little bit difficult to get in air and talk and stuff like that. So I apologize for that. But I wanted to get this video out. I haven't put a video out in a while. I don't get many opportunities to do this, so here we are, for better or for worse. I'm taking the bad with the good, and just in order to keep the metaphors running, I'm rolling with the punches. Okay, that's it for the metaphors. I've ran out. All right, so France. The computer can use it can use an invasion of France, or excuse me, an invasion of Belgium, and I'm pretty sure, I'm absolutely positive that the actual French government back in World War I, they would have never done that. But it's something that the programmers allow the computer to do in order to help the computer out against a wise Central Powers player. Okay. You can turn that off. There are options, all kinds of options available in this game where you can go in and you can turn that option off if you want to, if that's just a little bit too much out there in left field for you. Okay, but I let the computer do it because I want the computer to surprise me where it can. And even though I know the invasion is coming, there's no guarantee how that invasion is going to go. If the weather is bad, when the computer decides. Now, the computer does try to do the invasion on a turn that is good weather, but there have been a couple of occasions where it has taken the chance and has gone in winter. With the ground frozen over, and it's had problems with a rapid conquest of Belgium as a result of that. Okay, so there is a little bit of a random effect going on, which is nice. Yeah, I like to see that. I like the surprise. It makes the game interesting, more interesting. Okay, so anyways, that's pretty much it for me. Okay, so here's the whole map. This is the entire playable map here. Yes, I know that some of the scaling is a little bit off, but they had to do that in order to be able to get certain areas onto the map. And this is pretty much where all the action is going to be happening over the next couple of turns. The computer is going to take advantage of their superior numbers and do what it can in order to break through into Western Galicia and grab these objectives down here. Okay, so that's it for this video. I will be trying to crank them out as quickly as I can for you. I hope you found this at least somewhat interesting. I know first turns on 4X games like these can be very boring, but please stick with me on this. You'll see how the game develops. I had to take a little extra time during this video in order to cover some of the basics. And with that, thank you very much for tuning in. Please leave a like, share to your gaming buddies if you would. If you want to, please go ahead and subscribe. It helps grow the channel. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much.